Welcome everybody to the Blue Stable live show. Obviously, we just used Culture Shock's intro there. It's instead of the normal one, but hey, it's a learning experience. He's not here to moderate and give us direction, but if you are joining us, welcome. I'm Landon Oliver. I'm your host here with my guy Jack joining us. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Just got out of my own football practice, so ready to talk about some quarterbacks and see who might be the next Colts franchise quarterback.
That's right. And if you did not know what we're doing here, if you haven't seen it on Twitter already, we will be deep diving with film reviews into each position. We'll give you some guys that we like, going through there, how they fit with the Colts. And then not only that, but some stuff we like, some stuff we dislike, things they can work on. But we're going to be doing this for every position. Obviously, today we're getting the big one out of the way, and that is with the quarterbacks. So we've got a lot of good content here. I know you guys all know me, but you might not know Jack. So tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can hear it. Got a moped going on in the background. Hopefully that's not making too much noise. But yeah, my name's Jack Guiley. I'm actually a sophomore at DePaul University. I play football there, and I kind of just do film study and writing on the side. I started doing this my senior year of high school working for the Blue Stable, and it's been a great, place for me to just put out my work and a great platform. So I really appreciate it and just happy to be here and just kind of talk some football.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm definitely excited to talk to you. Obviously, we have a resident college football player we can lean on for that film review. It's always good. And then if you do enjoy this type of content, if you like the breakdowns with the film reviews, going over positions, make sure to like, subscribe here in the YouTube channel, like us on Twitter. You can follow me. There's my handle there. And where can everybody find you on Twitter?
Oh yeah, just at Guiley Jack, I believe it is. Actually, I don't even know what my own Twitter handle is. That's kind of funny. But if you type in Jack Guiley, I'll be there. Yeah, I got Instagram, all that stuff. I can plug it at the end. But yeah, if you ever want to reach me, I'm always available to talk Colts football when I'm not in class. So yeah.
I feel that. I remember the good old college days, man. So first off, let's get right into it, man. We're going to go ahead, kick this off with the guy that I expect to go first overall to the Carolina Panthers. They made that big move up to go get him, and that's CJ Stroud. So let's go over some film with CJ Stroud. Or first off, let's just talk about him for a second before we hop into it. Obviously, he's got the size, got the measurables, extremely accurate. I'm curious to see because I'm sure at this point everybody's kind of heard my viewpoint on it, but I'm really excited to hear what you think of CJ Stroud.
Yeah. So kind of everybody knows the narratives at this point going on with the quarterbacks or the guys that are expected to go in the top four. You've been hearing everybody talking about him for months. But really, the thing with CJ Stroud is he might go number one overall, and he would have gone number one overall for sure. There would be no question, 10, 15 years ago. He's that prototypical pocket passer, extremely accurate, got a great arm, so he's very good at all of the things that makes, a quarterback. And so that's what I'm really excited to see with CJ Stroud is, just how does that type of game still carry over? Because, nowadays in the NFL, we got a lot of guys that are very mobile, guys that are kind of just breaking the mold. And CJ Stroud is kind of that throwback, I guess, a little bit, if you consider throwback 10 to 15 years ago. He's kind of that throwback mold. So we just, kind of see how that's still going to go in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think like some of the really underrated parts of his game are just the way he processes information very quickly. And this isn't like a normal Ohio State offense that you kind of saw with Urban Meyer, where it's a lot of one read, kind of half-field stuff. They really do throw a lot of NFL-style concepts out there where he has to go through multiple progressions and make that right read and make that throw.
Yeah, totally agree. When I was watching CJ Stroud, I watched about 5 or 6 games, and that is something I saw. There are also a lot of those easy throws on film. He throws a lot of bubble screens, things like that, and just kind of they're really their big emphasis on Ohio State is getting their playmakers in space, and you can see that on film. Getting Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba open so they can make plays after the catch, and that's something that I saw that they really emphasize. But, you can see CJ Stroud working through progressions. There's some things he struggles with in that'll have to improve on, but, that's just any college quarterback. So he, there might be a few things he struggles with early on, and I can get into those a little bit deeper in a little bit. But, yeah, he's very put together, and he's probably the most polished passer overall, I would say, in this class. And I think that's kind of well known at this point.
Yeah, especially with how he performed at the pro days, the combine, going through the throwing drills, that kind of stuff is like made for a guy like him. So,
Oh yeah,
so yeah, we're really excited that. So let's get into the film, man. Let's go ahead and add him in here. We can kind of
great.
see a little bit of what makes him a special prospect and a potential number one overall pick here. Obviously, we're going to start off with a negative play. Then we're going to end on a positive note just because I like to get the negative stuff out of the way. I like to leave a good taste in everybody's mouth whenever we leave on a prospect. So we've got one bad thing that he can kind of work on. And then we've got two other things that are just really positive level stuff. So let's go ahead and get in here and we'll watch through it and then we'll kind of go back and we'll kind of break this down on what happens here.
Yep. So that play right there, that's kind of what everybody's saying. That's the CJ Stroud that you're worried about. And that's kind of the thing. He panics when that read's not there, and he kind of takes a look backside there, after his first read's not there, but then he kind of panics. So when those first couple, reads aren't open, when he goes through that progression real quick and sees nobody's there, he really kind of freaks out, doesn't really know what to do. And you can see that panic kind of just in his posture. He doesn't step up, he doesn't, try to scramble. He just kind of like looks like a deer in headlights and then just, kind of throws the ball away.
Yeah.
So really it's that creativity. It's that thing that, just after the snap, when the play breaks down, that's where he's really got to improve. And I think this is just example, one of that, or exhibit A, if you will.
Right. And you can kind of see here, they're running the too high middle field opens coverage. And you've already got like both of his reads here. They're already covered up here, and we can kind of see, he gets off those reads. So this is what I was saying is like he does get through his progressions. So, he sees those are open. He's trying to go over to his third read, and that's not open either. The running back is staying in the block. They don't have, that safety valve for him to get the ball out to. So at this point, what I would really love to see is for him to be able to create. And this is kind of what worries me a little bit at this next level here is because the way this league is changing with the quarterbacks, with the run game, guys that can create, within and without of the pocket. This would be a play that you would see a guy like, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. They would take off at this point and really try to gain some positive yards. And even some of the other quarterbacks in this class that we'll get to, but you can kind of see he kind of hesitates there. And that's what you were saying, like that deer in the headlights, just that little hesitation. And that's all it takes in the NFL. And at that level of football is just a split second hesitation. And, it's already closed at that point. So you can see that defensive end kind of looping back there. And now it's just up to him, nobody's open. What can you do? Can you create under pressure?
Yes.
And now you see he drifts back. Now he does throw the ball away, which is a positive. He's not forcing the ball there into coverage. But it's really, for me, what you kind of see is on this left side there. So at this point, whenever he looks, right here is whenever I'd want him to see that hole and say, hey, my third reads, I got through my progressions. My running back's not leaking out. He's staying in the block. Just let me go create.
Yeah, exactly. And what it looks like we have here is just a cover two man concept. And then it looks like that linebacker back there is spying. So what we'd like to see here is probably Stroud draw this man up by stepping up a little bit, looking like he's going to run, and then have the elusiveness to when that guy comes in, he escapes to the other side. And then for the wide receivers, it's scramble drill. This is what they work on. The other thing is since this is man, those defensive backs are not going to be looking at Stroud. They're going to be looking at their their man that they're guarding. So he's going to have a little more room to run, which is why you see that spy there. But yeah, once scramble drill happens, once you escape the pocket, your receivers are going to get open. That's what we see guys like Patrick Mahomes do so well, Josh Allen, those guys, once everything breaks down and, somebody's able to slip behind the defense and then they're able to just, throw it over the top. And so if Stroud, is able to manipulate defenders just with his movement and his eyes and his arm, that might not be in his bag, but that's something he can definitely improve on. And I think something he could have done here if this play was perfect.
Right. Yeah. And, it's obviously easy for us. We're sitting here with a clicker,
of course,
going through everything. It's always easy whenever you're doing this until you're actually out there. But so let's get into our next play here. So he does throw the ball away. Like I said, that is kind of kind of a good sign. But you see, he kind of thinks about it there, and then it's just like, nope.
Yeah, and also just to point out a little bit away, those two offensive tackles, probably both first round picks. They're DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson Jr. doing a great job over there, giving Stroud some protection. So we'll have
Yeah,
to see that.
yeah, and you're probably not going to get that level of protection in the
Yes.
NFL. Those pockets are going to be a little bit
Yeah.
tighter.
Yeah, and a little nugget also for Colts fans: look for Luke Wypler or Whippler, the center for Ohio State. That could be a Colts guy, possibly in the later rounds, maybe even day 2 as a guy. I think the Colts will really like him. He's a real solid prospect.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely one of my favorite center prospects, and possibly a guy that we touch on here in the next few weeks.
Yes, and we'll stick to quarterbacks. So just throwing that little
Oh,
nugget in there.
no, yeah, go ahead, man. That's what it's all about. So sometimes whenever you're watching film of other players, some guys flash, and that's what you're really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So let's now get in here to our next play. Like I said, this is more of a positive of CJ Stroud and something that is really something you see him do consistently at the college level. And really this type of stuff really translates well, and that's the accuracy. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, this is a fabulous throw. This is one of those throws when you're watching film, it pops out at you because you're like, that's excellent ball placement there. And it's also just a great concept there against that coverage. Yeah, little smash concept going on there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what guys the difference between you hear guys that like you can be a thrower of the football or you can be a passer of the football. And to me, this is CJ Stroud is a passer of the football. Like he throws with great touch. He throws with really good velocity in certain short concepts. But really what separates him is the ability to layer these throws over defenders. I mean, it's almost like he's walking down there and just handing the ball to guys sometimes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, accuracy is one of the things that always carries over pretty well into the NFL. It's hard to teach accuracy. You can teach footwork and all these things, but there is just something about repeatedly being able to throw the ball in tight windows that's really hard to carry over, or that does carry over really well. It's hard to teach. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So you can kind of see here, it seems like it might be a little bit of a disguise, and then they drop back, middle field close. Like I said, you run that smash concept, and they actually have pretty good coverage on it as well. Like it's not wide open, but
Yeah.
it's just the ball placement, and obviously we preface this kind of like you did with offensive tackles. He's throwing to a likely top 10 pick and a wide receiver there with Marvin Harrison Jr., who makes an incredible catch. But the ball placement on this is just absolutely fantastic.
Yes, the ball placement on that, especially to keep it away from the safety. So I'm actually in college. I play safety, and there's a lot of times where we just say, let that defender squeeze the ball because we don't think quarterbacks, I play D3, so they're obviously not even close to CJ Stroud, but we don't believe, they can thread the needle like that. So we just have to make the window as tight as possible. When you're playing a guy like this, it's just sickening because you try to get over the top, you have that defender squeeze and he's still putting it right in there. And there's really nothing you can do about it. That's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah. And then, it's also too, like he's throwing this from the opposite hash as well to the outside. And that's a lot harder of a throw than what he makes it look. And I think that's what's special is he makes the hard things look easy sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. So now let's get into another play here. And so this is the ever present Georgia game that everybody loves to talk about. There were some questions about his ability under pressure, his ability to create outside of the pocket. And then the Georgia game happened. And for me personally, like one game doesn't necessarily wipe away 2 years worth of film. But at that point, it shows me that you can do it. Now, can you do it consistently? And can you do it at a level that is needed to succeed in the NFL? Those are two different things. But it shows he can do it. So let's go through here. You can kind of see, getting through his progressions, going out to the right. I love the way he curves off that as well. I think that's really great stuff there. And then obviously just a laser on the move. It's just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, Georgia does a great job covering up his first read. And this is what we'd like to see him do, in that Michigan game. This is almost exactly not the same route concept, but, to drift
Oh,
off to his right and let these guys, create because, you've got great athletes at the receiver position and you just want to see him, being able to do things like this. He's directing traffic while he's running and then he's making that throw on the run. This is an incredibly difficult throw. He doesn't really have a platform to throw. He's
no,
moving
off,
and
yeah,
then
off
he's got to.
balance. He's able to get his shoulders square, get his hips square, really
Mhm.
rotate, and I mean that's just phenomenal stuff there.
Yeah.
And it's this is the type of stuff that if he can show consistently at the NFL level that maybe he didn't show consistently at the college level, I think this is the thing that separates him from being a number one overall pick as opposed to just being, a pure pocket passer. Very similar to like a guy like Justin Herbert. Like you didn't really see Justin Herbert do a ton of this stuff in college. And then he got to the NFL and it was like, whoa, like this guy can move a lot better than what people think.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's almost like when he's throwing the ball a lot of times, CJ Stroud, he's almost, I think you mentioned this earlier, he's just walking it down there and handing it to him. And that's just incredible. Like, even I went to the combine just to see it in person, and it was incredible just his ball placement, even compared to the other guys. Other guys were missing throws, and Stroud really just wasn't. And that's really hard, especially when you're throwing to guys you've never thrown to before. Timing's different, steps are different. You don't really know how they're going to run that route. So it's just incredible that he's able to adjust so quickly to different receivers, which is going to be important, when he goes and has all these new receivers with his new team.
Yeah, plus, I mean, something that's underrated too is like how catchable the ball is. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he throws a very soft, I mean, not necessarily like soft, but if you've ever played wide receiver, like caught footballs, you kind of know the difference between a guy just lasering a throw in there and a guy giving you that soft touch. You're able to just really kind of cushion it and bring it in safely.
Yeah. Stroud, as we'd like to say, has a changeup and a curveball. He's got multiple throws in his arsenal as opposed to a guy like Anthony Richardson now. We'll talk about Anthony Richardson later, but he's a guy that doesn't have as many starts as Stroud. I like to say that when you see Anthony Richardson throw a ball, even if it's a 5-yard drag route, it's like he's trying to throw a BB through a steel bucket every time. He's just, lasering that ball. Stroud's got, multiple different things that he can do. He'll throw the ball on throws and rope if he needs to, but he can
Yeah.
also, put some air under that so that his receiver can go and catch the ball and he's not, bouncing off his hands because you don't want to throw the ball 60 miles an hour at a guy each time if he's 5 yards away. So,
Right, right, for sure. So now let's get in. Any closing thoughts on CJ Stroud before we move on?
yeah, I think Stroud, and again, I'm not trying to just go with the narrative, but he is, one of the safest quarterback prospects in the draft because of this. There are a few things that I noticed. I actually wrote an article on why we should approach him with cautious optimism. I just think there are some things that he locks in on half-field reads sometimes, and he knows. Like he'll get to his backside read and he'll throw it sometimes when it's actually backside hitch or backside curl because that's muscle memory. But when that third route actually backside is a backside dig, sometimes I don't think he reads underneath defenders extremely well yet. And so he won't account for them. And it almost seems like he's scared. So he'll almost like hitch one extra hitch on that backside dig, and that allows the defenders to close on it. And a lot of times it's either getting the receiver lit up or, it's an inaccurate pass that can lead to an interception. So that was just one of the things I noticed on his film. But, overall, I mean, he's probably going to be, a great quarterback from day one, even though if there is a learning curve, that's something that's very easily coachable and something that I noted in the article I released a couple months ago. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, especially whenever you get a guy like Frank Reich, I mean, he's always going to try to make life a little bit easier on you.
mhm.
Getting these guys open and a guy that can really connect with the quarterback position because he was a quarterback. So I know Colts fans don't really necessarily want to hear like how good of a coach Frank Reich is, but that's something to me that has always been really special about him is the way that he's able to develop quarterbacks, make things a little bit easier, and you really kind of saw that in the production that these guys had, coming off bad years with other teams. Philip Rivers improved. Even Carson Wentz had a lot better of the
Mhm.
year with the Colts than he did those last couple of years with the Eagles. Jacoby Brissett's another one. So yeah, I mean, going to a place like Carolina that they just took a tackle, I believe, last year in the first round. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like you're gonna have a pretty decent foundation along the offensive line to work with. Losing DJ Moore, I mean, it isn't that great, but I mean, we'll see what they can piece together in the draft. But I mean, it's
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. And one of the things I think is a little bit underrated about what Carolina's done so far this offseason is, you go out and you sign Adam Thielen, who's one of the best, veteran wide receivers in the league. He's been around the block. He's going to make that, transition easier for CJ Stroud if he indeed does go to the Panthers there at number one. But even though they lost DJ Moore, you've still got Terrence Marshall in there, and so I think that they're building a quarterback friendly offense. They've already got a decent offensive line, and I think Thielen's going to be one of those guys who's going to be a quarterback's best friend, that safety blanket,
especially in the red zone.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So anything else, or are we ready to move on to guy number two?
Yeah, let's move on to guy number two. And
great,
that will be Bryce Young out of Alabama, another guy expected to go in the top 2 in most mock drafts, but there are some concerns that he can't really fix that could cause him to fall, possibly even, defer to the Colts. And I mean, we'll kind of see how the draft plays out. But, for me, Bryce Young, like, it's so hard to find negatives on Bryce Young on game film because there's just not really anything he does wrong. So whenever you're watching film and whenever you're watching, it's just like, man, like, let me see what I can find on this guy. And I mean, like, it's like a needle in a haystack trying to find bad plays from this dude.
Yeah. And there's an occasional miss here or there, but you're going to get that with any quarterback. Even Tom Brady, Drew Brees, some of the most accurate quarterbacks, we've watched in, our lifetimes, they're going to miss every once in a while. But Bryce Young, if he was, 4 inches taller, he'd be the consensus number 1 overall pick just because, or even, 2 or 3 inches taller. I'll even say that. And, sure, a few pounds heavier. But yeah, he is an incredible athlete and an incredible processor, and you see that on film. And I think that's why he's one of those guys that you just is going to do the right thing 99% of the time. And I think that's what's so special watching him, and why it's hard to root against him. And if you are rooting against him, you just have this empty feeling in your stomach, when there's 2 minutes left and Bryce Young has the ball. So if he goes to the Texans, I will not be thrilled. But there's smoke coming out that they might go a different direction.
Yeah.
With the Texans, you never know. But I will say it's draft season, and smoke does not always mean fire. Everybody's just throwing smoke. So smoke grenades for smoke grenades.
For sure. And a lot of these mock drafts I've even noticed here coming out, like, really over the last week, like, they've been like really like clickbaity, mock drafts where they're just trying to drive traffic at this point, all the way through the draft, because everybody's, put out a mock and everybody's done this and everybody's done this. And it's like, well, how can I be different? Well, let me put a defensive end in Houston. Let me have the Colts trade for Lamar Jackson. Let me have, let's
shot at Lance Zierlein today. Yeah.
No, I mean, that was one I saw, but there's been multiple, not just that one. But
he had the Texans taking Tyree Wilson at 2, which was pretty interesting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which, go ahead, take the old guy who needs some work. So we'll get into Bryce Young film.
Yeah. So now let's break down Bryce Young. And like I said, this is something to me, like, I was trying to find just negatives, and I hate even really showing this clip, but like, so this is something that worries a lot of people, is the size and how he's able to handle the punishment in the NFL, how he's going to be able to basically navigate that size and the size difference. Because for me, like, he played in the SEC. So you've got a lot of NFL size defensive linemen that are coming at you every play. It's not going to be that much of like a culture shock to him. Shout out Marcus. But I mean, it's just like a different level of athlete once you get to the NFL. And I mean, it's just pretty, it's pretty wild to think that a guy is this good at this size and it just does everything well. And we've really seen kind of an influx of like smaller quarterbacks having success over the last few years, guys like Russell Wilson, guys like Kyler Murray, but all those guys are thick, like thick lower bodies, thick thighs, thick midsections. And Bryce Young, as you can see, just even looking at him here, like, he's not a very thick dude.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the things where you want to talk to Bryce Young, obviously, when you're in these interviews and you're like, okay, how willing are you going to be to commit to maybe even change your play style just a little bit so that you protect your body more. Don't be trying to, throw your body into 250-pound linebackers, slide. If you're about to get sacked, go down. He is kind of a Houdini in the pocket, so do a little bit of that. But if there's the whole defensive line breaks through, don't try to, escape and just get, pummeled, because those are going to add up. And, when you draft a guy in the top 5 to be your franchise quarterback, you want to project that for the next decade. And, with Bryce Young and his size, can you do that? I don't know. It remains to be seen. It's going to be a great test if his body type will hold up for more than just, his rookie contract and maybe the next one.
Right. So this play, because I was just trying to find something, and like I said, I don't even really like showing this type of stuff, but this is this is going to be something that comes up. And this is one of the plays that he actually got hurt on. He just had like an AC joint sprain on this play, just a normal scramble drill out of the pocket. He's able to evade some pressure there. And then just, kind of a routine tackle. He just lands the wrong way there on his shoulder, and it causes them, not necessarily to miss time because he played through it. I thought he played really well through it as well. But how does this kind of translate to the NFL as far as, it's different whenever you're just getting tackled like on a routine tackle like that, as opposed to like multiple 300+ pound guys landing on you. And to be fair, also, this can happen to any player. Like, it's not even just his size. I mean, this happens to every quarterback, whether you're 6'4", 230, 5'10", 190. I mean, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just even on that play, I was talking about holding up, getting your body, like saving your body. That's one of those plays where you can't really do that because he's trying to outrun a linebacker and he kind of gets tripped up. Like, if that type of stuff happens, I think, maybe if he had a few extra pounds on him, that might help. But, that kind of landing, that was kind of just an awkward landing. I don't know if he was a few inches taller, if he, added 20 pounds of muscle, if that would really protect his AC joint there.
Right, exactly. But that's what I was saying, man. Like, it's so difficult to find any kind of like negative thing to say about Bryce Young because he's just so good. He's so polished. And like, even just like mentally, I mean, I think that is really will help him at the next level, even with his size, is just how great he is mentally. And he is very smart. I mean, this is a guy, like, he doesn't really take monster hits, and he does throw the ball away. And we'll kind of get into see some of that special stuff here. And one of the questions I saw a lot of people have is the arm strength, and whether he has that elite level arm to really drive the ball into tight windows. And while this isn't necessarily like a tight window throw, this will kind of show you that, yeah, he does have the arm strength to really push the ball down the field and stretch defenses out. And just the pocket movement here is beautiful as well. Just, the quick step up there, and just the violent motion of how quick he steps up, and he's able to torque his body and release this throw. So just so fast. And I mean, puts the ball on the money there. You'd love to see a guy score there.
Yeah. He kind of got tripped up. Really, the safety kind of made that play available, kind of getting burnt there, being flat-footed. But yeah, it's great to see, Bryce Young. I think he sees 27 there creeping up. He's going to go on a stunt here. So we're going to see a 5-man pressure. And I think Bryce Young identifies that. Now, Alabama's line picks it up really well, but, he's able to step up and show that good pocket presence. And then while moving forward, kind of plant and just deliver a dime, however many yards that is, 50 yards down the field. And then his receiver really probably should have scored on that. That wasn't really a ball placement issue.
Right. Yeah. That's probably going for 6 in the NFL.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And Arkansas just blows the coverage here. But yeah, I mean, that's probably not going to happen in the NFL. But, if the ball placement wouldn't have mattered there, I mean, even if the safety was in his hip pocket, that's still going for 6. Yeah, just again, beautiful ball placement. And like I said, that'll be going for 6 on Sundays. As long as the turf monster doesn't get you.
You got to watch out for those snipers.
Yep.
All right, now we get to me, like, something that was really special, and this was a really special play, really special moment in the game because this is late in the 4th quarter. They're down by 2 points, I believe, at this point, and this is kinda something you alluded to earlier where it's the 4th quarter in a tight game. You see Bryce Young driving, and you're like, "Oh, man," like, he just does that so often where you're never really out of a game with him at quarterback just because of how poised he is, and this is something that you see a guy like Patrick Mahomes do consistently on Sundays is
Mhm.
just this type of stuff here. It's just special.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead and see what they do here. Yeah, so just to start off with this one, you can see the elusiveness and the ability. He's got some upper body strength, obviously being able to shrug off some of those big time defensive tackles there from LSU. And then a little bit like the CJ Stroud play, kind of rolls out to his right and finds a guy that exactly just scramble drill kind of sneaks behind the defense. And there it is. I don't know if he's looking to scramble here, but he does a really good job of drawing the defense up into the protection. That spy, those extra guys that are supposed to not let him escape the pocket. And then he's going to bail again and kind of just think on his feet. And then he's like, oh, there's a guy open. When this happens, defenses don't really know what to do. You don't rep this very often in practice. So it's just kind of like, yep. And then there's two guys wide open. So when you can do that, it just adds an extra element that's extremely hard for defenses to account for.
Yeah, and you can kind of watch the safety and the cornerback here. You kind of watch them, and you see Bryce Young moving up. So obviously they move up as well and just kind of blow it, and then boom, just wide wide open.
Yeah. And, they're looking to make a tackle all week. They've heard in film, this guy likes to scramble. This guy likes to use his legs. So we got to contain him. And then it looks like he's going to run. And then all of a sudden, he pulls back there and you leave your guy uncovered. And I'm sure they got yelled at by their coach after this game. You got to stay on your man.
Right.
But they're probably like, hey, I got to tackle Bryce Young. He's a slippery guy.
Yeah, and to me, something too that like I really love about this play is like he's moving forward there, and then just the agility, the change of direction that he has, just boom, just that
Yeah.
quick, and the movement in the pocket, this like you said, the upper body strength, the shrug off that tackle. And this is LSU, so I mean, this isn't just like a cookie cutter program here. These are elite level athletes that get recruited to places like this.
Yeah, exactly. And additionally, what you love to see is the ball protection in the pocket there. I mean, there's a lot of hands in that small area. So seeing him cover the ball with two hands when he's running the ball or looking to run the ball, or whatever his brain is thinking about doing on this play, is really important because in the NFL, there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to get paid to come in there and swipe the ball. So ball protection there is great. It's something that a lot of guys don't do. I mean, you think about it, they even if they have small hands, they're going to lose the ball real easily, a la Daniel Jones. Like if Daniel Jones was doing this, he probably had the ball down here, and then a defender's just going to come swipe it away, and then there's your fumble. So seeing him cover the ball, that's kind of an underrated part of playing the position. That I think, he does all the intricacies very well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we'll just go ahead. We'll end that there. And once again, I'll ask you any closing thoughts on Bryce Young, how you think he projects to the NFL. What do you think or something that could hold him back? Because to me, really there's only one thing.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think we're probably on the same wavelength here that the only thing that's going to hold Bryce Young back is injuries from his size. We just haven't seen anybody that's this small ever really come in and succeed because there's just been no tests. So this is going to be kind of a test for the NFL. And I'm sure, down the road, there's going to be more guys if Bryce Young succeeds that are going to be, playing the quarterback position at this size. So this will be really interesting to see. But, I would love for the Colts to grab Bryce Young if he's available at 4. I think that would be a dream come true. I'm not particularly worried about his size because I think he's a real tough guy and he's obviously a very good processor. So I think he'll be a fantastic quarterback in the NFL and probably a guy that you can count on for the next decade as long as there's not recurring injuries.
Right. And like you said, man, like the injuries can happen to any player. Like, I mean, it's not just because of his size. So you really would like to see it hold up. But to me, like something too that's really interesting is like even at a program like Alabama, this wasn't even near the level of Alabama talent that they've had in the last few years. So really, like they were in a lot of games because of Bryce Young, as opposed to, you know, just getting carried just because he's at Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he had to, yeah, like you just kind of mentioned, he had to work with a lot of kind of a talent discrepancy from what we're used to with Alabama receivers. He was definitely carrying that team, and so yeah, it was a little bit different. But yeah, I think again, just to kind of reiterate it, I think Bryce Young is a special talent. Nothing you haven't heard before. But yeah, I would bet on Bryce Young 7 days out of the week. So.
Agree. And one thing too, just right before we move on, is something I don't really ever like to do is to create issues where there haven't been issues before.
Mhm.
So like Bryce Young doesn't really have an extensive injury history playing in one of the most physical conferences in college football. So to me, I mean, I would understand if he's, been consistently hurt and he's consistently, missing games, but that's not really the case. So I don't want to create issues where there aren't issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he had a bunch of injuries and had missed a ton of games, you'd be a little bit more worried about it. But then again, to play devil's advocate a little bit here, Paris Campbell didn't really have a whole lot of injury
Right.
history coming in. So you just never know. It's really unfortunate when it happens. And hopefully that isn't the case for Bryce Young, but we'll have to
Yeah,
wait and
for
see.
sure. Yeah, because I think everybody would love to see him succeed,
Hmm.
unless he lands in Houston. Obviously, you don't want to play that guy twice a year and have him.
Oh no.
So
That would be my worst nightmare, actually, because I really think he will be something. So
yeah, I agree. I think he's a fantastic player. So now let's get into our next guy here, and that is Will Levis. And this is a guy at the University of Kentucky. A lot of hotbed discussions about it. If you mention the name on Colts Twitter or really just Twitter in general, not just even the Colts, I mean, it's all over the internet. Like you get really varying opinions on this guy. And a lot of it is hate. I don't necessarily understand it because I think he's a lot better than what Twitter thinks he is. Um,
yeah.
and I've really kind of been one of his, kind of staunch supporters. Now I'll preface that with saying like I don't have him as the top ranked quarterback in this class, but if Indy was to draft Will Levis, I would be really happy. And I think he does a lot of good things that really translate to the next level. His ability, his accuracy under pressure, some of the NFL concepts that he's used to, his ability to throw into tight windows over the middle of the field. That's stuff that translates very well over to the NFL level. So I'm interested to hear what you think of Will Levis.
Yeah. So personally, for me, I don't love or hate Will Levis. I have him ranked as a quarterback 4. I have Anthony Richardson ahead of him. I'm a big Anthony Richardson supporter, but I will agree. I do think some of the hate that he kind of gets on Twitter or just, in general, it's kind of a little bit, just not necessary. I don't think he's automatically going to be a bust. With all of these guys, they all could have the potential to bust. And it really just comes down to the situation they're in. I really think that's 85% of it. So if you
Right.
allow the guy to develop and you get him in the right system, you give him ways to improve and you give him a specific plan, I think, he could be good. And it's really going to come down to the things we don't get to see. So like the interviews, how is he mentally? Is he coachable? Those type of things, so we won't get to see that. We just see what's on tape and we see the ability, but a lot of these things can be coached up. And I think that's why you see guys taking chances on players like Will Levis, or, you go back a few years, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, these type of guys who weren't perfectly, they weren't ready to go right away in the NFL, and we had to see them improve, but they got in good situations with good coaches and good weapons and good offensive lines, and they flourished. And so I think if Will Levis were to get in a situation like that, he could flourish. Get him in a West Coast system and something like that, which he's kind of already run pro style,
Right.
and just make those easy throws, which is something he has to improve on. But yeah, I really think Will Levis has a path to succeed, just like any of these other quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something that, I guess it's different just because like I've got to go to Kentucky's pro day and I got to talk to Will Levis and even before the pro day, like I was able to kind of ask him a few questions just over Twitter and stuff like that. And one thing I will always speak on is the work ethic he has. I think it's phenomenal. Like the guy is just a junkie for football, and that's really what you're looking for with any quarterback whenever you draft him. I mean, the guy works his ass off. Great teammate. He's just he wants to be the best, and he's really coachable. And that's something to me like I've never understood with like the Carson Wentz comparisons is because like they're viewed wildly different mentally. Like, I mean, yeah, there might be physical comparisons because he's a big quarterback with a big arm who can move, but that's where the comparison stops, is just because the mentality. He's a great leader, he's a great, you know, said worker, great teammate, and guys really kind of rally around him. And this is a Kentucky program, even that like they haven't had a lot of success in their history. And I believe he's like second all. He was there for 2 years, and he's second all time in wins at the quarterback position
Yeah.
in school history. Took him to double digit wins last year. Obviously, his offensive coordinator left. They lost some talent, you know, along their offensive line and at the wide receiver spot to the NFL. And he's working with a lot of really inexperienced guys. Like, I won't say they're not talented because I think Barry and Brown's really talented. I think Dane Key is really talented, but they're young and they're still learning. And with that, you're not going to have the same type of, you know, production that you would normally get from, you know, say like CJ Stroud's guys, where, you know, these are 5-star guys that are playing, you know, 2, 3 years there, you know, so he's very experienced with those. Where Will Levis, he was kind of walking into a new situation. Rich Scangarella was there, and
Yep.
I think he does some nice things, but at the same time, I think he put Will Levis in a lot of really bad positions last year. And well, I see you're like you're going to say something.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know. I was just going to kind of say, kind of what this situation reminds me of. I'm not comparing the players necessarily, but just kind of the situation is a little bit like Justin Herbert in terms of like Justin Herbert came back for his senior year. Will Levis, obviously, kind of did the same thing, and he performed worse. And everyone was kind of like when Justin Herbert was drafted, I just remember kind of leading up to it, everyone was like, oh, this guy's going to be a bust, you know,
Oh
not
yeah,
accurate enough. He's not going to run. He's in a weird system, and not that Will Levis is in a weird system. It's probably going to be pretty similar to what he runs, but you just really never know. And I think that, you know, even though Justin Herbert is kind of being a little bit misused by Joe Lombardi, I think that it's kind of a similar situation in terms of like the hate they're kind of getting. You know, whether it be on draft Twitter or just by fans that just do not want to see Will Levis drafted at all because they think automatically he's going to be a bust. And I just can't think you can write a guy off like that unless, you know, he's put in a horrible situation.
right. And really, that's for any quarterback. Like, situation is the most key thing for how guys flourish and how they succeed into the NFL.
Mm-hmm. And there's
So,
a lot of things that Levis has to clean up. I'm sure we'll get into it on film. But, you know,
yeah,
one of the things that he's doing is he's working with Jordan Palmer, who's one of the best quarterback coaches, you know, for guys that are trying to improve stuff like footwork and just, you know, setting a good base before you throw, because Will Levis gets happy feet and he'll sail things. He's not very good at throwing flat routes in the end zone. He's threw a couple picks like that where he just doesn't see it. And he's always a little bit he's a beat late on a lot of throws.
yeah,
You know, see it and he wants to confirm it with his eyes. You can't really do that in the NFL. So if he can just work on those things and obviously have somebody that's like, you just got to, you know, rip that ball. You got the arm talent to put it in those tight windows. You see it, you rip it type of thing. You don't really wait for the guy and then take a hitch and then throw it. Those are some things that, you know, he has to improve on. And, you know, I hope he does.
yeah. And a lot of times in college, he was able to get away with that just because the arm talent he possesses.
Mm-hmm.
And with the NFL, you're just not. The window is just so much smaller in the NFL. So,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, he's a hard worker. He loves to watch film. He's a film junkie. So, an extremely smart dude as well. You know, I believe he has a master's degree in business already. So, I mean, he's extremely smart dude. So let's get into some film on Will Levis.
Great.
We'll start out with some of the bad first, and this is kind of what you alluded to right before we caught on this film. Not necessarily a flat route, but just trusting that arm too much instead of letting it rip, you know, being accurate, the footwork, stuff like that. So we can kind of see here, this was against Georgia. So I will preface this, but we also have good against Georgia as well. So you got to take the good with the bad. And this is to a guy that we might be talking about here as well here in a few weeks, and that's Keely Ringo from Georgia. I love the effort too on the tackle. He threw an interception. I love to see quarterbacks hustle back and get that tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just looking here, it looks like. Can you play it through real quick? I got to
Yeah,
see this. Yeah. So it really just looks like Levis just assumes that safety is gonna just stay with the seamer out there on number 2 instead of splitting them, which he does a good job. Obviously, he's obviously very well coached by Kirby Smart, kind of splitting both of those. And so then it kind of surprises him when the safety's over the top. So he kind of like, he underthrows it because he's trying to fit it in that tight window, and then obviously it gets picked off there. So not really a good example there of pre-snap or post-snap processing. He had just assumed that safety would not lurk over there, and it kind of surprised him when it did. If you really wanted to try to fit this throw in there, I guess you could try to go back shoulder there to the pylon just over Ringo. But, that's just something he has to see post-snap. And I think when he gets surprised, he kind of just YOLO throws it, which we've seen from a lot of prospects. Not necessarily in this draft class, but just in other ones. And so he's got to work on just not throwing the ball up for grabs as much. There's a lot of turnover-worthy plays on his tape.
Yeah, and I agree. And this is one that I would have really liked to see, kind of instead of just fired in there, because he does have that propensity to, like you said, he doesn't necessarily have the change up or anything right now. Now that doesn't mean he can't develop it, but he is one of those guys that he kind of just like rifles a lot of balls in there. And I would love to see him have like more arc, kind of, throw it more towards that pylon with a little bit more arc, instead of just trying to rifle it in there and just trusting his arm a little too much there.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He almost like he just doesn't even confirm what he sees. It's just kind of like one read and let that thing fly. And there might be a few routes like that in the NFL. If you're just going to throw a back shoulder fade at the 5-yard line, but you're going to have to work through a progression, and most of the time. And yeah, you're not really just going to be able to say, see it, I see single coverage. Let's just throw the ball up for grabs. Unless you've got an elite receiver like Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins that can go up and high point that ball. You can do that sometimes if you're lucky.
Yeah, and I mean, like if he was to get drafted by the Colts too, he has two good guys on the outside that are really good at high pointing footballs, and Alec Pierce. But now let's get into some of the good here, and this is against Georgia, the 2021 season, which was a lot better film on Levis. The 2021 Georgia defense is just as much of a juggernaut, if not a little bit more of a juggernaut than this last season's. And this is the type of stuff that I would love to see offenses kind of utilize with Will Levis. It's his ability to get out of the pocket, throw on the move. And, this really showcases that arm strength. And this is, kind of a tight NFL style window of what he'll be throwing to on Sundays here. So you can kind of see just a little boot. I'd love to see him kind of curve that off a little bit more instead of drift back. But, that's just a fantastic throw here, and we'll get to see a better angle of it right here.
Yeah. So right there, you see it. That's what everybody loves to see nowadays. That's a fancy throw from a different arm angle, kind of like, just kind of a different, 3/4 slot there. And he's moving away from the ball, kind of throwing it away from his body, which is something that's like the cardinal rule that now guys are breaking of don't throw across your body. He's kind of doing that a little bit there, but really just the accuracy to fit it in between those defenders. It's just incredible here. And that's the type of thing. These are the flash plays from Will Levis. Those are the things that he flashes on film. Can he do it consistently? It's the thing that we're always going to ask with a lot of these prospects that are like this. But it's just an incredible throw. And yeah, he does a really good job there of setting his base before he throws instead of trying to keep running and throw it, which makes the ball a lot more accurate. And he does everything right with his footwork, and it pays off for him. So there's an example.
And what that shows too is like, he does have that ability to make those throws and to do the right thing as far as, the footwork and the accuracy. So he has that in him, just getting there consistently for him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something too, like I know like in 2022, like they really didn't utilize, and I don't know, if that was necessarily due to injury or the offensive playbook kind of changed with Scangarello, but they didn't really like get him out on the move as much as I thought they should have. And I think that's going to be a part of his game at the next level that teams are going to be able to utilize that a lot of people just kind of forget that he has because of last season. But the 2021 tape, he was very mobile. He was very good out of the pocket and throwing on the run.
Hmm. Yeah, and especially if you can utilize that kind of boot thing, it shrinks the field for him, so he's not having to make full field reads, which especially as he's learning would be something that's going to help him along a little bit.
Yeah, and so then here too, this is going back, and like I said, this is pre-injury, so they didn't do this a lot last year. They really took kind of the run game out of it, and I thought that really hurt him as the season went on. And what I'm kind of excited to see now that he's fully healed, you know, he had the toe injury, and that really kind of limited his mobility early on in the season. And going through the season, he was kind of recovering from that. And but this is the type of stuff that he can also give you. So when he's fully healthy, whenever he's able to be utilized in this type of offense, he can still kind of make these plays, these scramble drills where very similar to like the CJ Stroud one where we saw that, it wasn't there. He's able to see that, make a quick decision of, hey, my guys aren't open. Let me just go create. And this is just such an underrated aspect of his game that for some reason, not a lot of people do not point out for him, as far as what he can do. So that's a sick move, first off. And then his ability to hurdle a guy. He was really strong as a runner. And early on in his career at Penn State, they really kind of utilized him as just a pure runner, kind of like in a
Hmm.
Taysom Hill role, that he never really developed that quarterback skill until he got to Kentucky. So really he's got kind of very young in his quarterback development as far as like passing the football. Just because he wasn't asked to do that a lot at Penn State. This was more along the lines of what he was asked to do, designed runs, especially at the goal line and all that type of stuff. But this right here, man, like the ability to create outside of structure, to just just hurdle dudes and get upfield and get your guys a first down. So yeah, I mean it. What do you think?
Yeah, this is kind of the first play that you see when you pop on the highlight film of Will Levis. He's stiff arming guys, he's jumping over guys, he's really showing that athleticism. And you see it on the second clip too as well. This is a guy that's going to be able to get out of some sticky situations if he needs to, and that's something that you're going to need because it's kind of like a safety blanket early on in your NFL career when you don't see something and you're kind of getting happy feet there in the pocket, you can pull it down and run. And then, you can go back on film later and your coach will talk you through, hey, you saw this guy should have been open, but, you still made a positive play for your team. You're still advancing the ball. So the fact that he has this ability is just another thing that, adds in the plus column for him. And something that I'm excited to see how well he's able to carry it over into the NFL.
Yeah, and I definitely don't think, he's not going to be confused with guys, like Lamar Jackson or even Anthony Richardson as far as, his ability to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not necessarily in the same vein as like a CJ Stroud or like a, kind of these pocket passers back there where he does have that ability so your offense can utilize that skill set and it opens up a whole lot more of your playbook whenever you have that type of an athlete at quarterback.
Exactly.
All right. So some good stuff on Will Levis there. Like I said, I'm a fan of Will. I think what separates him from a lot of guys, and really like all four of these guys, in this quarterback class, or possibly five guys we'll get into, but is just how hard they are as workers. Like it seems like they're all kind of football junkies, which, like you said, obviously we're not going to be able to be privy to all the private conversations, but everything that comes out about these guys always seems to be really positive about how they prepare, how smart they are, how they love to watch film, how they lead their team, how they carry their team. That's something that Will Levis had to do a little bit more than most guys is carry that team, because the talent on that Kentucky team was not on par for a normal SEC team. And something else, because I know people love to kind of point to the box scores and stuff like that. But there's a very run heavy centric offense. It was very ball controlled, very, so you're not going to have these, spread offenses, these wide open throws, the 45 touchdown passes and, that's just something that you're not really going to see from the Kentucky offense. It's very more pro style, which is,
Hmm.
control the game, control the clock, make positive plays, don't make turnovers, which is something he did struggle with a little bit. But I believe he's such a hard worker that he can get to a level with the right situation, with the right coach, that you can really see him kind of take off and succeed in the NFL to where maybe he didn't succeed out in college.
Yeah, it's a lot of that kind of alluded to it, that power run game, a lot of boot action. So that's what he's used to. And I think you can kind of just carry over that schematically into the NFL. And I think, Levis, when he's given that, he might need a few weeks or even maybe a whole year to sit on the bench and just learn. He's kind of an older guy. So you're not necessarily going to love that fact. But, I think just giving him some time to sit and learn, if it's from Gardner Minshew or whomever, would be great for him. But he's already going to come in with a basic understanding of route concepts and how to read high to low, and how Shane Steichen or whomever is going to want him to what his progression is going to look like, and he's going to be used to all the going under center and doing all that stuff. And he'd probably be really good on QB sneaks too because he's a bigger guy. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He'd be fantastic on QB sneaks. And I believe in that Louisville game, even I think he had like 3 or 4. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. Uh,
mhm.
so, I mean, yeah, he's a guy that could really utilize his legs. So I'm really excited to kind of see where he goes, whether it's with Indy. I think Indy would be a really strong spot for him as well. And really just kind of utilize his skill set. So now um, we will get into our next guy here. It's the guy that I'm high on. A lot of guys are high on. I'm curious to see how you feel about him, and that is Anthony Richardson. Obviously, with the combine, we know he kind of really blew up at the combine. People think he's just some kind of raw mold of clay, which I think to an extent he is kind of like a ball of clay just because of the inexperience. But I think he does a lot of really good things within the pocket that maybe aren't pointed out a lot. Um, that I'm really going to try to highlight here in one of these plays that gives him more of a baseline to where he's maybe not as raw as what people think he is.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that's the narrative around Anthony Richardson. We create these narratives through different sources of media on guys, and then it kind of just sticks to them until somebody like a Dane Brugler or somebody like that comes in and kind of changes it because they have that kind of weight to where they can change it, or they'll show something that kind of disproves it, and then everybody kind of goes along with that. But for me, Anthony Richardson, he's only started a few games in college, and so he still has like all this growth. He's basically like a freshman coming out because he did sit and he started a few games, but like he really he's not attempted that many passes. It's a lot like kind of Trey Lance was coming out, although I think he's thrown maybe even less. I'm not 100% sure on this, but like less passes in college than Trey Lance. So, he's going to be coming in and he's going to make a lot of mistakes. He's still going to do some of that YOLO stuff. But one of the things you love to see on his film is when he sees something in one game and then he's able to correct it in the same game. And you see that, in the Utah game, you see that in the Tennessee game. He struggles a lot with inverted coverages, and you'll see that in the Tennessee game. Safeties will be dropping down and cornerbacks will be, dropping back into different zone coverages that you don't expect them to do post snap. And, you see him do that, recognize it, and then be able to fit the ball in because he's got the arm talent to just fit it just about anywhere. The other thing I'll say before we go on or talk about Anthony Richardson too is like when you go to the combine and you watch these guys, I mean, Anthony Richardson is a massive human being, and you don't really get to see that until you see him in person. But like the fact that he is that big and moves that quickly, something else, is just like that can be his crutch. Kind of like I was saying with Will Levis, like he'll just be able to get out of situations, that a lot of people won't be able to because of how big and fast he is, and he can shrug guys off. So that's something I'm really excited to see, even if he doesn't go to the Colts. Just like watching this very big, very fast man playing quarterback and running around back there and then throwing the ball, 70 yards on the run because he has the ability to do that. And so I'm just excited just to see because he's going to be exciting wherever he goes.
Yeah,
And so
and
that'll be really fun.
this is something too that like kind of separates him and Will Levis from Bryce Young and CJ Stroud is, they don't have the size concerns, they don't have the mobility concerns that the other two guys have. So both of these guys, like, while they are, raw, I guess, in a sense, as far as like they're not quite as polished passers as the other two guys, I think what they're able to bring to the table from just an athletic standpoint, from a size standpoint, is very much in vein of where this league is heading. And you really see guys with that skill set kind of hit at a higher rate here lately. As opposed to in the past where you would take these guys, and a lot of that's due to the college concepts that have kind of infiltrated the NFL probably over like the last 5 years or so. It's always kind of trickled
Mhm.
in, but it seems to be more of like this isn't necessarily a fad. Like I think this is kind of like where the game is heading.
Yeah, exactly. And it really just comes down to playing out of structure. The game is going more and more to playing out of structure just because guys are learning how to create, they're learning how to manipulate defenders. And again, you see this week in and week out with different guys who are able to do this, but manipulating defenders with your eyes and with your feet, that's something that's huge nowadays. And it opens up space that normally wasn't there because guys weren't able to do that before. And, it also helps that the rules are gearing more and more towards protecting quarterbacks. So guys are becoming more and more fearless with what they do. And that just creates bigger plays, more opportunities to create chunk plays and do things that we've never seen quarterbacks do before.
I'm really excited to see like where he lands if it is with Indy. I think like there's two really good spots that he could land, and I think Indy is one of the two spots that I would feel the most comfortable having a guy like Shane Steichen. And really, it seems like Indy's going to be very patient as well. Like everything we've heard is like, hey, this isn't for 2023. You don't draft guys for 2023. You draft these guys for 2025, 2026, and especially at quarterback, you're drafting him for hopefully the next decade plus. So whenever you take a guy like this, like, yeah, there's it's very rare to see guys that can step into bad situations and just immediately take over. Like guys like Andrew Luck, John Elway, even Peyton Manning struggled in year one. And so what you really don't want to see is him go to a situation where, they need help right away and they need a quarterback, right away that they're not willing to be patient with and have him just thrown to the wolves immediately.
Yeah. And so I think you mentioned Shane Steichen and the Colts, obviously. That's who we're talking about. But I also would love to see Anthony Richardson sit behind Jared Goff there and Ben Johnson over there in Detroit. I think that
Yeah.
would probably
Yeah.
might have been the other spot you were thinking of.
Yeah.
They're building
That
something
was the second
special
spot.
over there. Yeah. So if he were to go there, I think he'd flourish really well too. I'm just glad we have somebody to go ahead and play in front of him because I'd want him to sit for a while as well, just kind of learn. And I think when he even does get thrown into the fire, there's going to be some of those mistakes, just lack of experience really because the guy really hasn't played quarterback for that long. But if it clicks, it's going to be nuclear.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be everything about Anthony Richardson has the potential to be nuclear. This guy's got a nuclear level arm. He's got the speed and the size to just do about anything. I mean, the guy could play tight end or linebacker in the NFL and probably get away with it. Let's dig into the film here. Yeah,
the single most athletic quarterback we have ever seen test. And what we're going to show here is that maybe he's just not as raw as what people think he is. So let's start out with one of the negative plays here. And really, like to me, like most people would look at this play and they'd be like, oh man, that's a great throw. That's great. But really what you're looking at here is the processing and the ability to get through reads. And to me, he misses a touchdown here. And yeah, is it great that he completed the pass? Did his wide receiver have to work really hard to bring that in? Yeah, but to me, he misses 6.
Yeah. So obviously here, he completes the pass there, but he's locked in. He's dialed in. He's dialed in on one guy, and he doesn't see the wide receiver open up behind him, kind of there on the flood concept we got going on. The DB falls down, and you throw it right there. But he's looking at his first read. He doesn't anticipate this happening, which is typical with a guy that hasn't played very much. It's hard to think about that. You don't assume that guy's going to fall down there. But if he just picks his eyes up and again reads high to low, 3 to 2 to 1, he'd probably see that. Now he probably came off that progression early just because he saw the DB running with the wide receiver. But if you read 3 to 2 to 1 and back to 3, he's open there, and then it's just a beat and out. So if he can do that, if the protection holds up,
he's got good protection here as well. This is a fantastic pocket. So yeah, I mean, even then, it's good enough throw. Like I said, his wide receiver has to kind of make a circus catch there, but sometimes you need your wide receivers to help you out. But just kind of where he is as far as like his consistency in processing, his consistency in getting through progressions and reads. He's very young. And what's good though is like you've seen him do it in games. And a lot of times, like you mentioned, you've seen him do it in the same games where he misses a read, a couple times, and then he comes back in the second half, third quarter, fourth quarter, and he makes the correct read and he gets through the progressions and he makes the correct throw.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was just saying, and kind of like you just said, you'll see it. Even in this game, the bad clip wasn't where he screws up that inverted coverage, but he'll come back right here on the next clip, and you'll see him actually read it out and make the correction there.
So let's get through this, and then this one here is we hear a lot about the accuracy and the ability that he has as far as he's not an accurate quarterback. You can't learn accuracy. To me, it's just more of an inconsistency than it is an inability. And that's where people, I think, have to differentiate things, because being inconsistent in something doesn't mean you're unable to do something. Very similar to like we talked about with CJ Stroud in the Georgia game and how he created out of structure in that game and really used his legs. We know now he has the ability to do that, but now how do we get it out consistently? This is really something that you'll see in this clip. And this is a really great ball. This, fantastic footwork, stands strong in the pocket. He's able to fire a ball to the outside shoulder away from the defender. He leads his receiver, who's able to make a cut up the field and gain a few more extra yards here.
Yeah, and he does a great job here of going through the progression, finding the hole in the zone, and delivering a strike like he normally does. Just right there to his receiver. So there's nothing really wrong about this clip. This is one of the highlights of Anthony Richardson. This is one of the best, honestly, throws on his tape because you just see the recognition there and then the ability to throw it with accuracy.
And this was in the same game.
Velocity.
As the last clip. This is what you're talking about. This is the same game. And one thing I love about offenses whenever they have that helmet stripe is you're able to kind of see in real time the progressions. So you can kind of see, boom, boom, boom. And then, like I said, he throws it on the outside shoulder there. He's protecting his wide receiver. He's also leading him up the field to where he, can gain a few more extra yards there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great. And everyone doesn't think that he can go through progressions, but you just saw it right there with the helmet stripe, like you just said. The kid's able to do it. So,
yeah, we'll watch it one more time here. Just watch the helmet stripe on him. So, boom, boom, hits him right.
And
there.
Keeping it away from that defender there, he throws it to the receiver's outside shoulder. That's another little extra point there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then now we get into a play that makes him special. And like you said, a guy that if he does put it all together as a passer, that this is what can kind of take him above and beyond into that nuclear option. And something too, a little point here is I love the recognition, that he has, the pocket awareness, and he knows where the defenders are. And we'll kind of see this play because this is just ridiculous stuff for a guy this size. And he is covering some ground.
And that's that 4.4 speed we saw. I actually don't remember his exact 40 time. You might be able to remember it if off the top of your head. But that's a big man moving, and he just pulls it. He sees it, and he runs. And that's something, we were talking earlier. That's what we want to see from CJ Stroud a little bit more. It's just that gap opens up, and then there he goes. I mean, this is one of his first games ever starting. This is the first game of the year against Utah. He sees that opening, and he takes off. And once he's got the ball in his hand, I wouldn't want to be tackling him. I doubt you would want to be tackling him. And I don't think anybody else is really going to have a fun time tackling Anthony Richardson. So
no, and what's cool here too is like I know you mentioned at the beginning of the video with CJ Stroud is how they're running that cover 2 man coverage against them. You can't play man against a guy like this. I mean, you can, but it's kind of like at your own risk. And we'll kind of just see here. And this to me is what really kind of separates him from a lot of the other guys is, he's looking to throw here. So it's not like he's just like his read's not open and he runs. Like he's looking to throw. He sees the defense carry, and then, you know, he sees a clearing, just having that field vision to see the clearing in the defense and the ability to make a guy miss there at the end of that. He just kind of, that guy's definitely getting made fun of all week long.
Oh yeah, and that's a lot harder than it looks. I'll be honest.
Because you can't
As a
go
guy,
high. You can't go high.
yeah, that's doing open field tackling. Guys get clowned a lot for that. If you've ever played football on the defensive side, you know that is one of the hardest things to do. Just making a tackle in general isn't very easy when guys are as mobile and as big as that. So you don't really know what to do if you're that number one there. Actually, might be Clark Phillips. I'm not 100% sure on Clark Phillips' number, but yeah, Clark Phillips. He's a smaller guy. He is not going to be tackling Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
So
if he is, I mean, like I said, he's got to go low because if you go high and you get planted, that's even worse. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And for
exactly.
like you said, man, for a guy that size to move like that, I mean, that's just wild.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So there's some good stuff about Anthony Richardson. I personally have Anthony Richardson. Is he the most polished guy? No. But does he present the upside that you need in a loaded AFC? That if you take a chance on him, you're patient, you develop those passing skills, you get a little bit more consistency with his footwork, and very similar to like a guy like Will Levis, he's a guy that from all accounts, according to multiple people around him, like he's a very hard worker. He wants to be the best. He's going to put in that work. And that's really what kind of separates guys that are super raw that don't succeed from guys that do succeed.
Yeah, that's your Jamarcus Russells and your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allen. I keep saying those names, but those are just some of the guys that we've seen succeed. Your Jalen Hurts, guys like that we've seen succeed that were raw versus, you go back through all the busts, your Blake Bortles, your Jamarcus Russells, those type of guys. Not that Bortles hung around in the league for a little bit, so can't say that but
he did make an AFC championship game.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, with Russell, we've seen he was one of those guys that just didn't want to put in the work. But you think Richardson, he's said everything. And, if he's good in interviews, which it sounds like he has been, that he's willing to put in that work and really be a sponge for wherever he goes. And that's really the mentality you're going to have.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, big Anthony Richardson fans. Hopefully, we'll look forward to seeing whether he's in blue or not at the draft. And now we'll get into the last guy here, and that is Hendon Hooker. He's a guy that's been gaining a lot of steam recently. A lot of talk about him sneaking into the first round. Obviously, kind of struggled after the ACL injury. That's really unfortunate because he's a kid that I thought, I can't really say kid because he's about to be 26, but he's a guy that I thought was really put a lot of good stuff out there and had a chance to go a lot higher than probably what he'll be drafted at just because of the ACL injury. But there are also concerning things, obviously, that we'll get into. But he does a lot of good things as well. So kind of curious, what do you think about Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, Hendon Hooker, one of those guys that played, and everyone's making a big deal out of this Tennessee offense he played at. I think this kid could actually be a decent spot starter in the NFL given the right situation. He's got a decent arm. He's got pretty good pocket presence. He's got the mobility to kind of be a successful starter. Now, is he going to be a guy that is your franchise quarterback that you're not constantly looking to upgrade? I'm not 100% sure. He's also a lot older. So, it's just one of those things. But, he can't really help the offense he played in. He hit guys downfield, and he was incredibly good at taking care of the football. And that's something that you love to see. He did not have very many turnover-worthy plays. I think it was like 3 or 4 last year. And, he threw a lot of touchdowns. So will it be a little bit different? The offense that he played at Tennessee versus something Will Levis played at Kentucky are entirely different things. So he'll probably have to come down to a little bit something more like what Levis played, a little bit of a mix. but it's not going to be entirely foreign to him. And this guy isn't somebody I would necessarily take in the top 5. There's a lot of advocates for Hendon Hooker on Colts Twitter, and I would not take him before any of the top 4 because a lot of those people, when they cite their case for him, they cite the stats, and I don't think college stats are something that you should live and die by. It's more the tape, and there's some concerning things with Hendon Hooker. There's also a lot of good. If Hendon Hooker were 21 years old, I think he'd probably be, and didn't, well, even if he had an ACL tear, I still think he would be thought of as maybe a back end of the first round guy. But he shows a lot of poise. He already kind of, navigates the game like a veteran. He's a field general. A bunch of stereotypes and cliches I'm throwing out there right now. But I mean, Hendon Hooker,
somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. He's one of those guys I wouldn't be afraid to take a chance on. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there does seem to be like a contingent that are like, hey, draft Will Anderson or the top defensive guy at 4, and then get Hendon Hooker in the second round.
Yeah,
I just don't think you can pass up the talent of an Anthony Richardson or even a Will Levis, for that situation, because both guys have a chance to be, or like say like Bryce Young drops, or Carolina's been smokescreening everybody and they take Bryce Young, and then Houston doesn't take CJ Stroud and he's sitting there at 4. I mean, I just don't see a way that you're taking another quarterback outside of those 4.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I would not take Hendon Hooker in the sec. I would not do the situation where you take the best defensive player if you've got other quarterbacks available. I just don't think when you're shopping for quarterbacks at this rate, when you're in the top 4, you want upside. And Hendon Hooker gives you limited upside. We've seen the most that we'll probably get out of Hendon Hooker at the in the pros. Like, his game right now is not going to be exponentially better than what it is right now, as like there's not a whole lot of room for improvement. We've already kind of seen the finished product with Hendon Hooker as opposed to Anthony Richardson.
I do think even the learning curve, like even just something as simple as like taking snaps from under center, it's something that he only had like 14% of his snaps did not come from the shotgun. That were like 3-step drops. So, I mean, like just taking, a 5-step drop from under center, like that's something that he's going to have to learn whenever he gets to the NFL. And, well, I'm not going to say like learn, like he's never done it, but I mean, it's a lot different playing in that type of an offense as opposed to just, 2-3-step drops at a shotgun, looking at your first read. And really, like, their offense too was just kind of like so odd because of just how the wide splits from the wide receivers were just crazy. Like, you're never going to get that type of stuff at the NFL level.
Yeah, and it's not fully integrated yet. It's a little bit, and not trying to compare exactly, but it's kind of a little bit like that Baylor system that they ran back with.
It's very similar.
Robert Griffin III.
Yeah. The veer and shoot.
Yes, yeah, the kind of run and shoot action that you saw back with Houston, the Houston Cougars way back in the day with like Case Keenum, and then you saw it. I think the Lions tried to implement it a while ago. It didn't quite work for them.
Was it like Mike Martz or something that
Martz did it a little bit with the Rams. I believe that was kind of the greatest show on turf, but it didn't really carry over as well into the NFL. They had the Lions had that Houston quarterback they drafted real high. Name's escaping me right now, but then they tried to kind of do that back in the day, but it just didn't work. But I think Hendon Hooker has the capability to run an NFL offense. He's a very intelligent man.
Sure.
As you can see, as he's gone from system to system, from Virginia Tech to Tennessee, and succeeded. So he has the ability to read progressions. They're going to be different types of progressions than what he's used to, but it shouldn't be too much of an ask for him to do. There's some things that he does in the pocket that you don't love to see. And so
it's either like one or the other. Either like he's taking off and running and creating, or he's just very statuesque. Like there's no middle ground.
He sometimes likes to act like a statue, and as if there's nothing going around. with him. And, you have to move your feet. Remember Peyton Manning, he'd sit back there and chop his feet before he threw the ball. Like, you have to have a little bit of feet movement just in case your base isn't the way you want it. Like, you have to adjust your feet a little bit. But those are things you can improve on.
Right.
But, he's coming off an ACL tear. He's already one of the older prospects. But, hey, I think, if I'm the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and I have Kyle Trask as my only other, I guess, in Baker Mayfield too, why not take a shot Hendon Hooker in the second round, trade up with the Colts?
I know, like, he met with New Orleans. I think he's meeting with New Orleans. Like, the Saints would be a really good landing spot. I think there's a lot of teams that could use a guy like Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Colts are one of them.
Yeah, I would not be a huge proponent. In fact, I would actually be probably pretty upset if Chris Ballard went the route of drafting Will Anderson at 4 and got Hendon Hooker at 35, because I just think that kind of sets the process back even more. And I don't think Chris Ballard at that point would be at the end of that process. I think the reins would be turned over to somebody else if that were to happen.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get into some Hendon Hooker here. And what we'll see here starting out is Tennessee. Once again, this is at Georgia. So this is from this last season. Really good game as well. But we'll kind of see, what we're talking about, like a negative play. And you can kind of see, those half-field reads. He's just kind of locked on to one guy. And obviously you don't know when plays like this happen. You don't know if it's on the wide receiver or if it's on the quarterback. I'm normally a guy, I will blame the wide receiver most of the time. But you can just kind of see, inaccurate ball just never gets off that first read and still fires it in anyway.
Yeah, and that's one of the few mistakes Hooker made throughout the season. Like I said, I think he had 27 touchdowns, 2 picks. But that looks just like a miscommunication between both of them. I think Hooker thought he was going to curl up a little bit more to the inside, and the DB was just kind of sitting there, and they just miscommunicated. So I can't blame Hooker too much on that. See him do the little hitch there, like he's trying to pump fake or do something, and then he kind of just gets the ball out, and unfortunately it's a pick. But yeah, just you see it, just one read and go. But, again, he has the ability to work through a progression. So I'm not too worried about something like this.
Yeah. And something too, like you kind of said, like with the hitch there, you can kind of see where he shot up a little bit high there. You can kind of see his head kind of bob there, and that could possibly cause that ball to sail on him a little bit. So you can just kind of see that little motion right there, and then the ball just kind of gets fired in. But like I said, I'm normally one, like I'll probably blame the wide receiver for that one, not really blame Hooker. To me, it's just more about the consistency, with the footwork in the pocket, staying, solid. Normally he has a really good base as well. I will say that his base there was a little bit wide for me. It's just like, that's a really wide base. From.
He just, the base, like you said, is a little bit wide. Kind of just the arm kind of drags through the zone there. And I don't necessarily even know, he might have been trying to throw it right to the DB because that's where he thought his receiver was going to be. But that's just one of the things you don't really know unless you talk to him about the play, and he'll probably remember it, I'm sure. So he'll talk you through it. But so that's something you kind of get to later.
Yeah. But we see here what can happen when everything kind of goes to plan, and he throws an absolutely beautiful deep ball. He did it all season. Sometimes a little bit more inaccurate on the deep ball than what people think, but whenever he does get his base underneath him, whenever he's able to just let that thing rip, he can really kind of just drop it in into the bucket. And I think he's able to stretch a defense vertically, very good level there. And I mean, this is just a fantastic throw.
Yeah. And, he's got good deep ball accuracy for the most part. Obviously, this is a great example of that. Doesn't have, Anthony Richardson level arm, but nobody really does. But he's got all the arm talent to make a lot of NFL throws, and just dropping it right in the bucket, like you said, in between the corner and safety there. That's a tough throw. It's something you like to see because the safety might cap that a little bit more in the NFL, but even just the ball placement there, I don't really think he's going to have anything to worry about.
So you can kind of see you can kind of see whenever he separates to throw this ball, just kind of like right there, his shoulders already moving. Wide receivers even, if you're even, I'm leaving,
Yep.
yeah, all that kind of good stuff. So, um, yeah, and Tennessee did this a lot, man. Like they ran a lot of these, vert concepts. They ran a lot of four verts, which is just kind of
Hmm.
funny, um, because teams would consistently give them like free releases off the line. And I just
Yep.
never understood. I'm just like, man, like just get a body on these guys. Just quit letting them release off the line. And you can kind of see here, but like I said, it's just beautiful, really great footwork. And and I mean, it's just stuff you really like to see.
Yeah, drop in the bucket. I'll say it again. Sound like a broken record at this point, but that's a tough throw to make. Throwing it right over the DB's shoulder, beating the safety to it. Just incredible ball placement on deep throws, and something he did a lot this year.
Yeah, and so now we'll get into kind of more of an underrated part of his game, something we talked about a little bit earlier, where it's like if he's not just like a statue in the pocket, or he's not making these quick, one read throws, he is able to actually get outside of the pocket to create with his legs. And, obviously with the ACL injury, there were some question marks. To me, that's not even near the death blow that it was even like 10 years ago now.
Hmm.
It's kind of like turned into like a very mild procedure, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, very mobile guy. So you can kind of see him, under pressure here. He's able to rip through that and make a guy miss here. That's tough. That's a tough move. And really use his legs to create outside of the pocket there.
Yeah, and it's not something he's going to absolutely kill you with, but he is a guy that can, like a lot of these guys. I mean, he's a little bit more mobile, or he shows his legs off a little bit more on film than C.J. Stroud. But he can definitely do that. He can get you that first down, and he'll lower his shoulder and get you the tough yards because
Man,
he's a tough guy.
he
It's
does
just
not
going to
want to. He does not want to come off that read.
no.
He is a big
He
fan.
Yeah, he is sitting there
He
waiting,
is
waiting,
locked.
waiting. Darnell Wright's doing a great job there, blocking on his left or his right side there, and uh, just doing a great job. And then he's like, "Oh, my time's up," and then that internal clock goes off, and he bails.
Yeah, and
But
see, like
he,
this is kind of what you were talking about though earlier about like wanting to see some of those like NFL level throws that you don't really get from this offense because he is so locked onto that read. But like, so this guy coming open right here, you would love to see him throw this pass with some anticipation, kind of like
mm-hmm,
right there, which is something you would see CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, even possibly Will Levis do to some extent. Like Will Levis would probably wait till he's about open like that, but he would fire that ball in there instead of just being locked on
yep.
for the time. And but the good news is, like you said, he is able to evade the pressure, puts a pretty dirty move on a guy there, and is able to kind of get vertical and create some positive yards for his team.
Yep, and that's something you love to see on film. Again, anytime a guy can extend plays with his legs, it adds an extra offensive player almost, or an extra threat to account for as a defense. I'll tell you, just doing scouting reports or going through scouting reports in college here, it's one thing, you have to account for a guy that has legs versus a guy that, we say is going to be a statue back there. He's not going to beat you much with your legs. You almost always have to drop a spy on a guy that can beat you with legs. So again, it just adds an extra element to the game that you have to think about as a defender. And when you're thinking as a defender a whole lot, it's not normally going to be a good thing. You want to be reacting to what you see with your eyes. And so you don't want to be thinking too much. And so Hendon Hooker showing that mobility. Can he sustain that after the ACL tear? You kind of said it's become more of a minor surgery. We've seen guys come back from it just fine, but every guy is different. How will his body heal? That's something I'm very curious to see, and we'll see. Probably. We won't get to see in the preseason this year, or likely, but we might be able to see in some NFL games this year, depending on where he goes.
Yeah. And according to him, I know whenever we were able to speak with him at the Senior Bowl, he said he was planning on being ready for training camp already.
Yeah.
So that's a positive sign, and believe he's already kind of started throwing a few balls here recently. He said he was ready to pick up, start, doing physical therapy as far as running, jogging, that kind of stuff. So it seems like he is healing very quickly from this. It's not going to be anything that was major. It seems like it was a clean tear, nothing messy or anything like
Yeah.
that. So that is positive news. If you are a Hendon Hooker guy, you should probably count on him bouncing back. But like you said, he is a little bit older. He's 25. I believe he'll be 26 in January.
Yeah.
So he might not even take, say he goes to a team, he sets for a year. He might not even be taking his first NFL snaps as a rookie. He might be going into year 2 as a 26-year-old before getting, his first snaps. Whereas you got a guy like Anthony Richardson, who's only 20 years old, and he'll be 21, but whenever the season gets underway, as opposed,
Yeah.
to being that old. So,
And that's a huge difference. I mean, you can kind of think about it in a little bit of the same way as the NBA draft, where there's just so much more room to grow, so much room for GMs to project. Because then the GM can go back and say, hey, to the coaches, I have this ball of clay. I gave him to you when he was 20, 21 years old. And you had 5 years to, get him into something. He had all these tools, as opposed to if you draft Hendon Hooker, there's not really much for the coach to do. But the GM can kind of pass that off on the coach. Not that he's going to blame him and make him a scapegoat.
right.
Kind of like we saw Chris Ballard do with.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, we've seen that before here recently.
But that is a thought that probably goes through a coach's mind or a GM's mind is, hey, if I give the coach, it might come down on him if this guy doesn't turn out, to be what we thought he was going to be, because he had all the tools and we saw him put it together. So now that's on the coach.
Yeah, and that's really kind of crazy to think about too. If you really kind of sit down and think about it, is like, and this is what you're talking about as far as like drafting for potential, is would you rather have, so in 5 years from now, with development and all that stuff, if you're patient, you could have Anthony Richardson, who will be the exact same age Hendon Hooker is right now at this moment in 5 years. And so, like, can you imagine, like, if that was a hit, like a year 5 Anthony Richardson, or like even like Will Levis? Will Levis is a little bit older, but he's not as old as what people think he is. I believe he's going to be 24 in June. So, right before, the rookie mini camps and all that kind of stuff get underway, he'll be 23. But by the time training camp rolls around, he'll be 24, which is still, probably about a year younger than Hendon Hooker. So, that's something that a lot of people say will work against him. I don't necessarily think so. To me, like, I mean, if you think he's the guy, like with any of these guys, like if you think he's the guy and you think you can get 10 years of really good quarterback play out of it, I just think you got to take him. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I am curious, though. We got one more guy to talk about, somebody that we both think has a chance to surprise people. I was able to see this guy perform at the Senior Bowl. Didn't really have a good Senior Bowl week, but he played a lot better in the game than he did during practice. But and that's Jake Haener. I know we talked about him. Because I asked you, like, hey, do you have a guy that you think could surprise? And you said Jake Haener, and I was like, oh, well, that was my guy too. So, instead of just switching it up just for talking points, I mean, if we both have the same guy, I mean, I'd love to get your views on him, and I'll kind of speak on him a little bit as well.
Yeah. So Jake Haener, I kind of told you before the show, I kind of view him as like your bargain bin or your Goodwill Bryce Young. In a way, he's smaller, around the same size. He's like 6 foot. But not the biggest guy in the world. He doesn't have all the traits, obviously, as Young, but he's got a lot of poise and a lot of here's another cliche for you that I believe applies very well to Jake Haener. He's got a lot of moxie, kind of same thing as like Phillip Rivers-esque, where he just hangs in there. And, I mean, there'll be a rusher coming in his face, and this man will just deliver the ball. And that's something you love to see. I think that's something that carries over, really well, is just a guy that's able to stand in there and not be afraid. And move around a little bit. I think that Jake Haener is one of those guys that will stick around in the league for a few years and be one of those guys that can be a spot starter. So a la Gardner Minshew, somebody like that who will get paid to be a starter or a bridge guy, a Jacoby Brissett type. Now, I'm not comparing him to Jacoby Brissett. They're two completely different players. But like just
similar career paths.
Similar career paths. And his ceiling might be a type of like Jimmy Garoppolo guy who can come in and he keeps getting paid by teams, or like a Geno Smith, where they're constantly kind of at replaceable level. But if you're looking for a bridge guy, you give Jake Haener and he wins you 7 or 8 games. And doesn't necessarily keep the fan base ecstatic, but you put wins in the W column, and you keep your finances green because you're winning a few games. And so Jake Haener is one of those guys who will probably be available on day 3. Doesn't have this sky high upside, but just a guy that's going to hang in there, deliver. And just we saw it time and time again at Fresno State. He was just playing with the against UCLA. Did a great job in that game. And just, he's constantly delivering. And a guy that I would love to see, the Colts picking like the 6th or 7th round to compete with Sam Ehlinger for a third stringer backup job just for, fun.
Yeah. And like they're actually like, those are like really good examples of like how he is, because he's very similar in the Sam Ehlinger vein, where like just that competitive guy that he's always kind of kept Texas in games. And like Haener did the same thing at Fresno State. Is like you're never really out of a game with Jake Haener. He like, even whenever they were down, like he would just continue to fight, continue to claw. And he's a guy that's going to hold guys accountable. And there's a cliche right there, accountability. That's a cliche. Holding guys accountable. But yeah, I mean, like he would be a guy that I would love to have in any quarterback room. Also, very intelligent guy. Was able also. It's always kind of shocking whenever I see some of these guys in person, and it's like I'm like the same size as you, and you're an NFL quarterback. Like that's a little awkward for sure. But I mean, he very well spoken, and I just love the way he plays the game, and he kind of just leaves it all out there on the field. And there's always a path forward for guys like that, whether it's going to the NFL and being in that spot starter, that backup, or that Taylor Heineke type of a player.
There's another one.
Yeah. Love
that comparison.
That's like he reminds me, not quite as big of an arm as Taylor Heineke, because I think Heineke's got a cannon on him, but he reminds me a lot of watching like Taylor Heineke, where you're just like no play is ever really dead. And to me, like even like transitioning out of playing and like becoming a coach, like he could be like that coach in the locker room, or like in that quarterback room for guys as they progress through their careers.
Yeah, that Chad Henne type.
Which
is invaluable. It really is.
Yeah,
he's like
people
clipboard guy.
Like people don't think about that, but there's a reason why guys like that stick around the league for so long.
Chase Daniels, another one, just keeps getting $12 million contracts.
I'll say one of the best businessmen in NFL. Like even if you didn't learn anything as a quarterback room with him, you should just learn business from Chase Daniel.
There you go.
He's been awesome. But
that man will teach you how to talk to the right people to stick around for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But guy that just got signed today, Brian Hoyer going to Las Vegas. I mean, like
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, we could just keep throwing out random underachieving backups, but
they stick around.
But yeah, whenever that's the thing though, it's like so the average NFL career, especially for quarterbacks, is like 4 years, and sometimes it's even less than that for quarterbacks. You see guys in year 2 and year 3 get cut, they just never make it back to the league. But having a guy like that, especially whenever you're picking in the 6th, 7th round, that can come in very similar to a Sam Ehlinger with the Colts, that can come into that locker room and really kind of just soak up information, continue to develop, but also be a valuable guy in your locker room, be a valuable guy in your quarterback room for, the starters, because that's the thing too, is like, even the starters at the NFL level, they all like, whenever you're that good and you can take any bit of information you can from any player, like there's been a lot of stuff that Patrick Mahomes has learned from his backup quarterbacks that he will even tell you. And like these guys will never see the field, and people think of them as just like they're not really much, but like all these guys take stuff from each other and they implement it and they learn, and that's just such an invaluable role to play on a team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if he can just absorb some of the knowledge from wherever he goes and just kind of redistribute that to younger guys down the road, that's how you keep getting paid, like we said. So
that's what it's all about.
Just keep making that money. Hey, I'd love to be in that role.
You never know. It might be a spot.
Haven't played quarterback in a while, so probably won't be doing that anytime soon. But
for
sure.
Man. I'm a little bit older than you, but it's been a good 15 years, I guess, since I've really kind of dug in. So, well, all right, man. So that ends our quarterback review. Like I said, if you guys enjoyed this type of content, sitting down with Jack, very, very knowledgeable guy, able to break down film. and, just have him go through this film with me, look at some different things, always have two sets of eyes and go through these quarterbacks. We're going to be doing this for every position. Obviously, we just focused on quarterbacks today, but coming up this Friday, we will be focusing on two more positions. So we're going to start doubling up here as we get closer to the draft. So we'll kind of do it in tandems, wide receiver, cornerbacks, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, running backs, just these kind of, positions that really kind of meld well together. And
Yep.
you just say it, especially with you being a DB. I actually just finished going through my DB because that's usually something I'll reserve for March. It's like the last position group.
Yep.
Really kind of dig
Some
into.
great DBs in this class.
Yeah, man,
Love
it is
watching some
loaded.
guys that are really good at their
Yeah,
craft.
so I've got
So
12 DBs graded in my top 50, which is
wow.
nuts. So so a really special group of DBs. I'm going to be really excited to sit down with you and listen to you go over that. And
Love to.
yeah, man. So any closing remarks for the people before we hop out of here?
I'll just say my dream scenario, if you're wondering, I've kind of put this out there a few times on social media through my mock drafts or anything, is that the Colts go out and get Anthony Richardson, let him learn behind Gardner Minshew, and then, kind of just build up the wide receiver room a little bit more, maybe go out and get a starting guard. Love to see that. But that's kind of my ideal scenario, kind of the way realistically things play out. Obviously, I would say my number one scenario is the Colts end up with Bryce Young, but a great caveat would be a guy with top tier potential, and that's something that I hope happens. So
yeah, I agree. Like that's where I would want to end it at, is whenever we're going through is like, who would we want for the Colts? And to me, it's Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson, if his name is called on draft night, hopefully your guys at the Blue Stable will once again be representing you in Kansas City. Same way we had some guys out in Las Vegas last year. Shad was out there. So hopefully, whenever we get the credentials information, we'll be out there. We'll be able to cover the draft live, hopefully get a chance with the new quarterback of the Colts, whoever that may be. But me personally, I would be ecstatic to have Anthony Richardson. And, really like any of these guys, like you said earlier, any of these guys, they all have a path to success in the NFL.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes this a special quarterback class. It's not necessarily, you might not have that guy at the top, that Trevor Lawrence, that Joe Burrow, that Andrew Luck. You might not have that guy at the top that's a slam dunk. But whenever you can go 4 or 5 deep on guys and say, hey, these guys have a chance to be franchise quarterbacks, that's really rare for a draft class.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'd just say, you look for the widest paths of success for all these guys. I wouldn't write anybody off. You can have your opinion on which guy you think has the best chance to succeed, which everyone loves to give. But yeah, we just give ours. We say what we see on film, and that's kind of how we give our opinions. So it's kind of the process.
Yep. So, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time. We will be breaking down some more positions. We will have those 2 positions announced this week coming on Thursday as we sift through the NFL draft leading up to draft day, where the Colts will be major players. I'm super excited for it. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Jack, for sitting down. Excited to do this over the next few weeks with you.
Of course. Yeah, it was great. Can't wait to keep doing this. And hopefully we'll find some gems up in the coming few position groups. So love to talk about it.
For sure. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you on Friday.